Hello, everyone, and welcome to TAG Tech Talks. I'm Larry Williams, President and CEO of TAG, and I'm pleased to bring you another edition of this podcast featuring our technology community's best and brightest leaders. This podcast is all about showcasing what makes Georgia the number one place to do business and bringing stories of how our technology community is driving innovation and benefiting our technology community. Today we have Carolyn Pleiss, Vice President of Strategy and Value Realization for Integrated Business Technologies at COX Enterprises. That's a mouthful. Carolyn is responsible for strategy development, organizational change, enterprise architecture, and portfolio management. He guides strategic and transformative technology initiatives across COX Enterprises and collaborates with technology leaders enterprise-wide. Richard Cox, the CIO of COX Enterprise, says Carolyn plays a critical role in our transformation. Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you, Larry. It's great to be here.
Well, Carolyn, to just get started, tell us about your role at COX Enterprises, and then also tell us a little bit about your career journey and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, great. I'd love to. So I started out in technology in the late 90s as a systems analyst, moved into project and process management, and then I went into consulting. And my specialty was developing and implementing tailored technology processes. And I did that for a long time, but after a while, I decided I actually wanted to implement and own what I've been preaching for such a long time. So I started at Cox. I started in their Auto Trader publishing division. So if you ever went into 7-Eleven and picked up your Auto Trader magazine for $1, that was us.
All right.
Needless to say, the publishing business was, not doing so well. So Cox shed that division and I moved over to autotrader.com. I spent 5 years at Auto Trader and I was first leading things I knew, delivery and technology, business operations. But then my career took a pretty sharp right turn. And let me give you a little background there. So Auto Trader was a large waterfall shop, and we were pretty successful actually in delivering products. But our time to market was over a year from ideation to launch, which, is just shameful in the digital product space. So we had acquired Kelley Blue Book, and Kelley Blue Book was an agile shop and had been for many years. And so as we started to develop products together, you can imagine the dissonance that was going on, right? And the contrast between the way the two groups was, stark. And so my initial task was damage control because of the political pressure that we were getting. And, the hypothesis was that, yeah, we delivered differently, but we're just as effective as Kelley Blue Book. So I didn't know, other than theory, I knew very little about Agile. So I dug in, did a lot of research to educate myself. I visited Agile shops. I talked to Agile experts. And what I concluded was that actually we weren't better. And if we didn't make that shift to Agile, we were certainly going to be left behind. So we embarked on a top to bottom Agile transformation. And my understanding of how that was going to work was, all right, well, hire somebody. They come in, they train a bunch of people. I do my day job, and then they leave, and poof, we're Agile. And that is completely wrong. What I quickly learned is Agile is not a methodology. It's not a technology model. It's not grassroots. If you did a survey of how many Agile transformations fail, I don't know what the percentage is, but I bet it's pretty high. And that, to me, my theory as to why that is because if it's really going to be successful, it has to be a true mindset shift across all facets of the organization. And I was very fortunate because the timing was right for us. I mean, our competition was kicking our butts. They were releasing products that we had only started even talking about. So our president was ready for a change, ready to listen. So I had strong executive support and involvement. I mean, our president would educate himself to the point where he understood concepts. So when he could talk broadly to the organization, which was, of course, a huge lift for us. So we piloted with a new product, and we took our time to market on that product from 18 months as an average to 13 weeks. Now, 13 weeks still isn't great. I'm going to be honest, but it's way better than 18 months. So, as you can imagine, we generated a lot of buzz and attention, and that led to cooperation. So, after we kind of had that success, we had people banging down our door, come and do this over here, come and do this with this product line. So the entire transformation took about 2 years, but it completely changed my personal career trajectory because I became known as someone who can lead transformational efforts. And so in 2015, we executed, Cox Automotive executed a $4.5 billion acquisition of Track Technologies. You may or may not remember that. But I led the technology integration team. And then shortly afterwards, I was tapped to establish a scaled agile framework across all of Cox Automotive product. And to give you an idea of the scale, so Cox Automotive product at the time, we had over 400 agile teams with a population of over 4,000 product and technology team members. So it was huge. So I stood that up. I optimized it for a few years, at which point I started talking to Richard Cox, the CIO now at CEI Technologies, about the transformation he was looking to embark on. And Richard and I had a previous relationship because he was a big stakeholder during the Auto Trader transformation. So he knew what I could do. So I moved over to CEI last April. And as you said earlier, my team supports several facets of the delivery lifecycle. So we lead portfolio management, helping our internal customers develop value-based roadmaps and prioritize their investments. We also lead enterprise architecture, which kind of plays two roles for us. They play a role in solutioning work, but they also play a broader role in driving innovation and new technology practices across the organization. We also provide organizational change support. That includes communication, change management functions, both for our customer projects, so readiness, but also for our internal transformation work. And finally, we provide delivery services through program and project management support. So it's a broad mandate, but I'm very, very excited about it.
It is a broad mandate. I love the way that you tell the story, um, not only about how you approach this, but some of the lessons learned. I mean, your story about agile and mindset, that really just goes to, culture, eat strategy for breakfast. So,
Totally.
you've got to be able to have that mindset and then having the whole team support, at every level,
Yes.
executive, peer, as well as being able to talk and being able to work with your leadership to share the vision. That is a great story. Hey,
Yeah.
listen. So tell us a little bit more about the tools and the skills that you've learned along your career that help you lead and manage the change. I mean, change management is a big part of your role today.
Yes, absolutely. And I've learned a lot of things some the hard way, but I think one of the key things that's often overlooked is setting an inspirational, palpable vision that describes how is it really going to feel different when we achieve our goals, focusing on outcomes and the why. And by the way, that vision is different for customers versus team members. But if you can kind of set that, aspirational view, it really kind of helps inspire people to be willing to kind of suspend disbelief and go on the journey with you. Another key is to iterate. So you don't have it all buttoned up and then go in and be like, ta-da, here it is. It's much more about starting with something and showing positive results. And listen, I'm going to be totally transparent. Stack the deck. Like this is not an experiment. So make the conditions such that you'll have a win. And when you do that, you create the buzz because you want people knocking down your door, not the other way around. And then, of course, there's a huge aspect to how you deal with people. And I think psychological safety, as much as that term has been maybe overused, but when you think about what that means, meeting people where they are. So, people who aren't exposed to some different ways of doing things, it seems so foreign to them. And so there's a fear about, will I be able to make that transition? What about my job? What about feeding my family? Like you're talking about some pretty, you know, deep seated fear. So understanding how to address those, I think, is really important. And as cliche as it sounds, everybody says it, but the WIFM, what's in it for me? And the way I feel about doing that is to really use empathy. So if you put yourself in your team member's position and you think, okay, if I were them, what would I be afraid of? And address that. And customers are different. Like with customers, you want to, they don't care about process. They don't really care how you get it done. But if they understand that I have this pain point and this is going to solve that pain point, and really specific, again, going to that palpable, how's it going to do that? That is the way to get them to take the leap of faith, because that's what it is. It's a leap of faith. And then it's keeping, as they go through the valley of despair, keeping them on track. Um, that's, and you have to do that the whole time. It's not like you can just sort of do it once and then you're done. You have to manage it the whole time through any transformational effort.
Oh, there's a lot in there, everything you said. And I think the other part is solving pain points is usually what we do a lot of. But the other is really expressing the opportunity. This is going to make you more profitable. This is going to
Right?
drive more revenue. This is exciting. This
Right.
is the inspirational things. This is going to make your job easier, and you're going to be able to be more productive.
That's right.
Great things. Change management. I think you were saying it. I've found that whenever you implement broad change, people tend to fall in about three categories. I usually find some people that are early adopters. Yes, this is it. I'm ready. Let's go. Then there's some that I've always done it this other way. I don't really want to change. I
Right.
wouldn't say it that way. But
Right. Right. Oh, yeah. Sometimes they do.
yep. And then yeah, right. And then third is some people that are in the middle. They say, "Gosh, I kind of get it. I understand what you're saying, but I've never done it that way,
Right.
and maybe I'm a little scared, or
Right.
can you help me?" And and I've always thought, well, so where do you spend your energy? And what I found is you got to spend your energy equally across all three.
That's
You got to
right.
keep the energized people energized.
Yep.
You got to manage the naysayers. They're not toxic,
Yep.
whatever that means,
Yep.
outcome. And then you got to coach those middle people along. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's
that
exactly
is
right.
great.
That's exactly
So
right.
now, in all of this, your mandate is to modernize and transform Cox's technology. Um, I want you to tell us about this broad mission. I'm just going, but you've got a broad portfolio. From
Yes.
all of the different lines of business that Cox does, B2B, you've got consumer facing, you've got your internal employees. Sort of paint that picture and talk about what this mandate to modernize and transform.
The organization. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so there's a little bit of background there that I want to give you. So, when Richard, the CIO, when he came into the organization, he what he was kind of facing was a group that had been effective, but hadn't had change in a really really long time. And so one of the first things he did when he got in was he commissioned a customer survey effort, and we interviewed more than 200 internal customers and team members. I mean, he actually used an external department to do it so that it was as objective as possible. And I'll tell you, the takeaways were tough to hear. I mean, to the point where we debated, do we even share these with team members? Because they're pretty hard. One was we're not strategic. We're extremely tactical. We don't think long term. That was one perception. The second, that's been kind of the hardest to address, really, is they didn't see us as partnering to understand their pain points and priorities. We've taken a very order taking stance, and that forced them to get into the business of knowing the tech and then telling us what to do, instead of us being at the table, understanding their strategies, and then coming to the table with the solutions. And then finally, there's a perception that we lacked urgency with regards to service delivery. Now, I can tell you that's not true. What, because I'm on the ground, there's a lot of urgency. The challenge is that we just were completely unable to keep our commitments for many, many reasons that we're all kind of trying to address at the moment. So as depressing as the feedback was, we really took it as a call to action. And so we started a transformation journey. We developed a strategy that, ultimately our vision is to modernize that entire group from top to bottom. That includes, people, process, and technologies, all of it. So in 2020, we focused mainly on culture and organization. In Q4, we had a major reorg. One of our challenges was we had extremely siloed organizations with a lot of things getting thrown over the wall, including blame. And it made it really hard to get things done because you had to hit all of these silos to get something out the door. So the reorg we did, I mean, when I say major, I think almost half our organization had a new boss or a new job or something. It was pretty radical. Um, but it did break those silos down. So now we're figuring out how to operate without the silos and collaborate better. In 2021, we have kind of 5 objectives that we're focused on, but I'm going to just talk about 3 that I think are more urgent. So one is technology evolution. That's a broad category, but we're really talking about not only modernization, but dealing with the tech debt that we've had up until now. It's not, very exciting, but it is, we got those cement shoes that keep you from getting stuff done. So we want to eliminate that as much as possible. The second is delivery excellence, and those are some of these foundational, boring, budget management and project management and all these kind of things that will get us to be able to keep those commitments. And then the last one is just driving a culture of performance. So, making it really clear for our team how they can show up differently. And for me, I want to drive all this pride, like we're going to be the destination for top talent at Cox. We've said that over and over again. Our customers are going to love us. We're going to get positive feedback. And, that just feeds itself, then you're like, oh, that was great. I want to do more of that. So, this is definitely a journey. We're in it for the long haul. I expect it to be a few years, but I am super bullish, like really excited about how far we've gotten just in the last year.
It is. I love the way you put, and I think you have a broad definition of this. You have a customer centric view. And I think you
Yep,
realize that that means, across customers, across stakeholders, your internal customers, your external,
exactly.
and that really drives a lot of your thinking. And let's talk, let's dig into that a little bit more because part of modernizing and transforming is to continue to drive that organizational change. You've already mentioned Agile. So, how does Agile drive your thinking and approach to continuous improvement?
Yeah, continuous improvement is one of the most versatile agile tenets that you can apply to any any part of your life. Basically, it's more like a culture. And what it means is that, we had a lot of team members when I got there, and I interviewed lots of team members trying to get to know everybody. What I heard over and over again was they knew what was broken, like they saw it, and it was frustrating that to them, but they did not feel empowered to do anything about it. And so when you feel helpless to change your environment, you're just going to kind of, first of all, get pretty demotivated, but second of all, nothing gets better. But if you set up this culture of continuous improvement, it's like you're empowering team members to constantly evaluate their surroundings and come up with ways to improve. And maybe improve implies that there are challenges. Maybe it's just optimizing. Maybe there's something that works, but it could always be better. So just never being satisfied with the way things are. It drives a lot of confidence. And let me explain why. So, I feel like there's this hamster wheel, that old saying, perfection's the enemy of good enough. We get on this hamster wheel and we're like, gotta do one more thing, add this one more thing before we go out and do anything. When you have this culture of continuous improvement, like we use the word hypothesis a lot, and we say, hey, you know what? This is a theory we have. We're going to test it out. And if it works, we're going to tweak it until it gets better and better. If it doesn't work, we're going to pivot and do something else. And making that okay goes along with the whole fail forward mindset, right? Because it's just we're constantly looking at stuff. But then the last thing I'll say about it is, even if you have the perfect process and a tool is like completely fit for purpose, with the speed of technology and business, it'll be obsolete in a period of time. So we can employ continuous improvement all the time. We'll keep up with that speed of change in our market or in our business. So I think it's a critical success factor whether you're agile or not.
Isn't that great? I mean, I love the word hypothesis. I love the way that you use it. Isn't that a great word to take a lot of data, a lot of learnings, whiteboard sessions, and
Right,
then really start to test them? Say,
right,
hey, I've got a hypothesis. What do you think?
right, right.
As a, I
And it
think
takes
that's
a lot of the pressure off to be right out of the
yeah,
gate. You know what I mean? Because you're admitting, like, I'm not sure this is going to work. We're going to give it a shot.
yeah, and yeah, and continue that feedback and that molding of the clay right on the wheel.
Right, exactly.
And when we talked earlier, we sort of identified a little phrase here, and your words, and part of a lot of your work. And you talk about the innovation of stabilization. And
Yes.
so, what does that mean to your work?
Well, it does seem like an oxymoron. I think, you know, when you approach an organization that's in just major need of a makeover, I really feel like the first thing you have to do is stabilize. And coming into this org with my background, Agile can be a very disruptive transformation. And so can pretty much anything we were trying to do here. And so my question to myself was, all right, do we just blow this up? This is going to be disruptive anyway. Just blow it up and make it agile right out of the gate. Or do we put in place some more conventional structures and tools that, honestly, we'll be ripping out in a year? I mean, I know that as we develop them. Talk about tech debt, like process debt. Um, but I went with the latter, and maybe the innovation of stabilization was my way of feeling good about that. But but I did
It's like elegant simplicity, right?
right, exactly, exactly. But I really felt like we needed to stabilize our delivery foundation before we could get fancy. And so, but as we've been doing it, I wanted to introduce innovative ways that we could innovate within our more conventional approaches. So I'll give you a quick example that comes to mind. It's a little thing, but it gives you an idea of our mindset. So coming into the org, we had and old school sounds judgy. I don't mean it to. Architectural review board, good old ARB. And in an agile environment, this is not something that you need or want. And let me explain why. Because, and this is true of so many things in waterfall, whether it's stage gates or governance, it outsources accountability. So the development team can say this: hey, that is a terrible design, but architecture signed off on it, so it's not really our fault. So it sort of just pushes that into another group who probably didn't have any idea what they were thinking in the first place. So we don't have agile teams. So how are we going to do this? So what we did was, when we designed our discovery phase, again, a pretty traditional phase that you have in waterfall, we structured it so that the development team or tech lead and the architect work together to develop the solution right there and then. And so that way they have joint ownership of it. They can't blame one another if it isn't good. We're pulling in the architecture view of the landscape of what else is out there and tools that we should be using. And as a result, we're not going to use an ARB. We're going to hold that tech lead and that architect accountable because that's their solution. So these are, we're trying to trying to innovate some, conventional constraints, but helping stabilize delivery, but still prepping for our agile future.
This is great. This is a great conversation. Let's go a little bit and let's have some fun. You ready?
I'm
Let's
ready.
it's now time. Let's look into your crystal ball. I
Okay.
want to I want to see the future from your eyes. And so, what are some key global trends in technology and innovation that you're seeing? You
Yep.
can talk about it in sort of, you can frame it in your world, or you can go galactic on us too.
Okay. Okay. So normally I wouldn't say cloud was a new trend, but for our team, we're essentially a collection of SaaS ERP systems that support non-differentiated corporate functions like finance, legal, HR. Sounds very exciting. I come from a
Yeah.
product development background, so moving to the cloud was a no-brainer when it comes to driving innovation and speed to market. It's sort of duh. Of course, you would do that. The value proposition for moving ERP systems to the cloud is very different and just has to be more thoughtful. And one example that came to mind as I was thinking about this was if you move to a cloud ERP solution, actually let me do it this way. If you have an on-prem ERP solution, customers can customize the heck out of it, and they often do because they want their snowflakes and they want the tool to conform to their processes, not the way around. It's the other way around. So as a result, you end up with tons of customizations on these on-prem implementations, making upgrades just insane, like super expensive, months and months and months, because you have to go back and remediate all these customizations. In the cloud, when it's time to upgrade, you upgrade. Like, it's not that they flip a switch, but you have a window and you cannot be so far off the beaten track that it's going to take you 2 years to do it. So we have to drive our customer this like mindset shift for customers that actually the processes the tool has in place, we're not talking about like really crazy stuff. Like most of the time, they're pretty conventional ways of doing conventional things. So as a result of that, we will just by definition, we're going to have less expensive run costs because instead of every 5 years investing $12 million to do an upgrade, you're not going to have that because you'll have forced most of these not most a lot of customizations out of the way. And then what you really dealt with is integration pieces, which are the stuff you do in house to make sure you can integrate with different systems. And moving them to the cloud has a much more product development motivation. But when you think about that business case that I described, that's a little more complex. So you kind of have to think about it that way in order for it to make sense. But from a trend perspective, I mean, if you look around at human capital management systems or Oracle, SAP, they're in the cloud now. So it's really just a matter of when you want to bite that bullet and make the investment. So we'll be doing that too. But again, the way you talk about it has to be a little different. The other trend, which is a little bit obvious as well, is the digitization, the acceleration of digitization. And there are obvious ways, like we've all talked about, like collaboration tools need to be better to support all the myriad of ways we're going to work after the pandemic is past us. But there are other more specific ways, and what comes to mind is at Cox Automotive for several years now, we had been encouraging our customers, our dealer customers, to move to more digitized auctions, more use of the digital medium instead of going to physical auctions. And I don't know if dealers, but I'm not traditionally embracing bleeding edge of anything, right? So they were not very motivated to do that. They kind of like things the way they were. But then the pandemic hit and we shut the auctions down. And so our customers shifted super fast to this digital implementation of the auction. So we now have made a huge investment in not only getting that out there, but optimizing it and making it a more digital product. You can imagine the difference between how you design a physical auction versus how you're actually going to have a user experience on a smartphone for digital auctions. So that's been actually a positive for us to get that momentum. But I think there'll be lots of ways that organizations will have to figure out, all right, well, how do we operate digitally versus versus it on face to face.
Those are great. I greatly appreciate that. Hey, as we were wrapping up, you've had a great career journey. You've got a great story. Greatly appreciate you sharing with it. What advice would you tell others that are seeking a role like yours? I know that diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of the primary goals at Cox.
Yeah.
So please share your advice for how others can seek a role like yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, as a woman who spent most of my career in technology, we all know it can be challenging to move into leadership roles, even as more women are coming into STEM careers. It's just getting to that higher level can be challenging. And I was fortunate enough to move into leadership a little over 10 years ago. And I can tell you, of course, I've often been the only leader, a woman, female leader on the leadership team. Like, it just happens. This is definitely changing at Cox. They're making an intentional, active um, campaign to help us think about things differently and to talk about the value of diverse opinions. It's not just the right thing to do, it actually helps you come up with better solutions. And today, I'm happy to say I have a female leader who's a peer of mine on the leadership team. So I can tell you from personal experience, it's happening. But, you know, that's part of it. But, for men and women, my advice, honestly, is to take the jungle gym approach to your career, to steal Susan Sandberg's idea. I mean, I've never known anyone who chased titles that ended up happy, because once you get the title, you actually have to do the job, and if it's not the job you want, you're pretty miserable. But if you can look at adjacencies to your skill set, I mean, I spent 7 years as a senior director, but I had 4 different jobs. So keeping an eye open for those opportunities that are near you, then you pick up just a little bit more of a different skill, because it's hard sometimes for people to see you as anything else once you've been doing something for a while. And then the other thing I'll say is, look, if you see a problem next to you, don't be afraid to create a role. I mean, even if go to your boss and say, listen, I can make your life easier. Let's talk about this. I've almost never been turned down when I've done that. Um, and then the last thing I'll say, self promotion is really hard. I struggle with it. So the way I prefer to talk about it is get exposure. So volunteer to do the presentation to the boss or the board, even if you really are nervous about it and don't want to do it. Find creative ways to let people know what you've accomplished other than saying, hey, that was my idea, because people will take your ideas, and you don't want to be the person who gets petty about it, but you do need to find a way to make leadership know that really came from you. And even I'll give you a really tactical example that I started doing years ago. When it comes time for the performance review, I actually take the time to inventory all the stuff I did that year, and in the context of tangible results. So I did this, and here's how you saw the change. Because they're really busy, and I guarantee they can only see about 10% of what you're doing. And so it's just, those are some of the ways you can, self promote without being someone who's like, look what I did all the time, because nobody likes those people. Even bosses don't like those people. So subtly find ways to make people know, let people know all your contributions.
That is great advice, and I really love the piece about look at what's going to make you happy as well, and what's going to give you job satisfaction.
Exactly.
I've coached people along the way that a lot of times the things that you love that make you successful, as you get promoted, you get pulled further and further away from those things.
That's right.
Your duties comes other. So
That's exactly right.
be cognizant of what you're getting into if you ask for that promotion.
Right. That's, yes, I couldn't agree more.
Well, great. Well, to everyone listening, thank you for joining this edition of Tag Tech Talks. Carolyn Pleiss, thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. I'm Larry
Thanks.
Williams, President and CEO of TAG. Please find more of our TAG Tech Talks at tagonline.org. Thanks again, Carolyn.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.